Thank you. So yeah, hepatocellular carcinoma, 89% of the primary carcinomas are hepatocellular. Exposure to mycotoxins or alpha toxins, those are both fungal toxins. So I don't, you could find that in food. I don't know how you would be overly, at least in first world country, I don't know how you would have a lot of that problems. But one of the things that happens with a lot of cancers, not just hepatocellular carcinoma, is long-term exposure. So I'll tell you something kind of weird. Their researchers were looking in somewhere in the Middle East, and the men were getting esophageal cancer at a rather high rate, and they're trying to figure out why was it only the men, and why was this rate high? Were they eating something? Well, it turns out they were actually they were just having tea, and it was boiling. Boiling tea. I mean, they would just, I don't know how they did it, but they would do it. They would actually cause damage every time they did that. They actually caused damage to their esophagus, to the point where that damage, those cells were in a constant state of being damaged, and irritation. Constant state of irritation actually can create cancer. So it's kind of a weird thought that boiling water can create cancer, but actually that's what they found. And so no different in liver cancer, long-term, well, let's see. Long-term chronic NASH, and that is, by the way, stands for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So, in other words, most Americans who have really bad fatty livers, it's probably due to either obesity, which would be a non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or alcoholic steatohepatitis. So, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. You see plenty of those every day. The vast majority of this doesn't proceed to hepatocellular carcinoma, but a significant enough number does that they call it a pre-existing condition or a pre-existing causality. Also, hepatitis B, the chronic form. So if it's not chronic, if you get rid of it in 6 weeks, it's not likely going to lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. But if you have it for a very, very long time, it may lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. Same thing with hep C. And then also pre-existing condition for that may be hemochromatosis. So that was iron, right? Hemochromatosis, these people carry too much iron in their liver. It can cause reactions and cause kind of a fatty liver for reason. Also, glycogen storage, as in like was it von Gerke's disease can be a precursor. Having that puts you at higher risk for HCC. And the number one pre-existing condition, and a lot of these conditions I've already mentioned: NASH, Hep B, chronic Hep B, chronic Hep C. They can also actually lead to just simply cirrhosis in general. That also includes, you know what, let's just add this one, ETOH, alcohol abuse. So cirrhosis, whether it's ETOH caused or caused by anything else, is definitely a pre-existing condition to HCC. Incidentally, not that it matters, my father, we have no idea if he had a pre-existing condition. No known cirrhosis or fatty liver or hepatitis or anything. So we just kind of came out of nowhere. He did work in the plastics industry for a number of years, and there is actually some thought that burning plastics can cause hepatocellular carcinoma. Breathe that in. So don't burn your plastics. Okay, and the strange thing is HCC, that's not HLL, those are C's there. It can come in totally different varieties as far as ultrasound. Here we have obviously a solitary, well, we think it's solitary. It could be multiple, but I think I read that on this particular person, they had a solitary nodule, tumor, lesion, whatever you want to call it. And so they call this the focal form of hepatocellular carcinoma. This will eventually grow. This will eventually metastasize, meaning, you know, little pieces will break off. Tiny little microscopic pieces will break off, go through the bloodstream, and find another location to start growing. So this is one form. This form, I originally grabbed this thinking I thought I was grabbing diffuse. Diffuse meaning it's kind of just everywhere. All the entire liver is untouched, it's all of it is touched by cancer. But this actually, and on second, look at this or closer inspection on this, there's some normal liver over here. So this is actually, it's massive. And from what I understand, this is what my father's look like. Massive, heterogeneous, but still, as far as we know, it's a single tumor. So I guess technically we could also call this one focal. It's not diffuse like I originally thought it was. And then, of course, multifocal. And probably a single focal could eventually become multifocal as well. Let's see, is that one? I think it is. I think that one, that one, that one. Those are all. So you could say this is, perhaps if this was the first one to grow, then it start to locally metastasize. That could be what has happened here. But we call this multifocal. So those are three general presentations. And then I wanted to talk about, so cancer can disrupt the normal physiology, but in more than one way. And so cancer can work on the cellular level, so the hepatocytes just simply don't function correctly. And certainly on a diffuse cancer, if it's everywhere, all of those cells, and there's virtually no cell that's not affected by the cancer. So their physiology is affected by that. And then the other possibility is a mass effect. This person has a mass effect, no doubt about it. In fact, that's probably a little bit of kidney down here. All right. So right lobe of the liver is entirely taken over by this gigantic tumor. Blood vessels are going to be pushed aside. Ducts are going to be pushed aside. Both vessels and ducts are going to be collapsed from the weight of that tumor. This tumor here is technically not HCC, but I used it for to show you. This is a tumor. So the arrows are showing us too, but this tumor is right in the porta hepatis. Well, what happens in the porta hepatis? Well, the portal vein is trying to go in there, and if not the portal vein, then the duct on top of the portal vein is trying to go into the liver at this point. That's probably not working as well. We have so there's obviously a lot of disruption from this tumor. This tumor is actually probably, it's called a Klatskin tumor. It's actually a tumor of the bile ducts right where they split onto right and left is where Klatskin tumor goes. But that is not what we're talking about. But I just thought this would be a good example of how a tumor can physically affect an area. Okay. Now, these patients, they're going to have a number of increases. Most of their LFTs are going to be increased. ALP, ALK phos. This person's ALK phos right here, probably very high, even though this is not HCC, but very high. ALK phos is the one I would look for any kind of obstruction. This is certainly obstructing right down there. So your ALK phos is going to be high. AST high. ALT high. And very more specific to HCC, alpha fetal protein. Pregnant women and people with cancer have high value for alpha fetal protein. So, but generally people who have HCC are not young enough to be pregnant. They're going to be more in their 60s, 70s, 80s. 60s, 70s, I think, are they more common. So, we look for all these to go up. If everything is up, you could pretty much assume something's going on with the liver, but not necessarily HCC. These lead you in a direction. They don't tell you exactly for sure what's going on. And one of the things that can happen either because of obstruction, I keep circling that, I might as well leave it circled, right? Either because of obstruction or because of failure of the hepatocytes to work correctly, we can see jaundice. in the skin and the eyes. The yellowing is caused by increased bilirubin. Increased bilirubin in the blood causes that appearance. Same thing with little babies when they're born. Sometimes they have too much bilirubin in their blood, and so they're put under UV lights, which helps the body break down the bilirubin. One thing that bilirubin does, makes you itch. Pruritus, itchiness itchiness, but in this case due to bilirubin. Oh, I wanted to mention, not a big deal, let's see. If, that's probably a good place. If we do have metastasis from the liver to other locations, those locations usually have a pattern. The heart. This is nuts. That's to heart, lungs, brain, kidney, yeah, go ahead, adrenals. The adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys, so it's kind of almost a one and the same. Spleen and bone. So if this metastasizes, these are the more likely locations that it will go to. The ultrasound appearance of, yeah, did not leave myself enough room. Yeah. I don't want to make it too big because it causes problems. I don't want to make it All right, that's barely enough that I've given myself. So this is one of the things that I find frustrating. It's frustrating to teach because other books in the past have really made it seem like you got to know this, and you got to know every in and out, if it's exactly what each different type of cancer looks like. And this, like I said before, this book has been a little bit nicer to us. Go back to black. U.S. appearance. And what I love about it, it just says, well, it could be anywhere from hypoechoic to echogenic. HCC, U.S. appearance. Hypoechoic to echogenic. It could be homogeneous to heterogeneous. It could be focal to diffuse. Barely made it. So it could look like anything. It could be dark on the screen, bright on the screen, smooth, really messy. It could be one little thumbnail, pinky nail sized tumor to the entire liver being involved. So any of that is possible. I grabbed this image here simply because it's hard to show metastasis on an ultrasound because we're only looking at small parts of the body at a time. But this is a PET/CT scan. So they're positron electronic tomography. Oh. Yeah, positron tomography. I can't remember exactly what the E stands for. I'm a little embarrassed by that, but and with a CT scan at the same time. Well, this is the bladder down here. That's nothing. But you know, so that's a lymph node there, and these are all tumors. So the liver is entirely filled with tumors on this person, but it does look like they have active lymph nodes throughout the body here. Well, I think this is the thymus. Yeah, that's the thymus. That's fine. Yeah, that's the problem with these. They take up normal things are taken up as well here, but definitely this person has some problems here. And then and this is another reconstruction. So one machine can produce two very, very different looking appearances. But here's a reconstruction of nodules on this person's. That's definitely one there. Okay, yeah. Liver. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because there's lung around the outside. Okay, I guess I should have taken a closer look at this image beforehand. Well, in any case, that's not what we do. Just decided to roll that up there. So like I said, this is METS2 liver. I did not put anything down for hemangio vessels, blood vessels, sarcoma. That is a primary liver cancer as well. It starts in the vessels, but this is a far more rare of a disease. And your book didn't get into it, and I don't think we want to get into it either. We have enough common stuff to learn about. Metastasis to the liver is 20 times more common. So even though I've said, you know, boy, we have this HCC, and it's really important to understand everything about that, but really METS to liver are 20 times more common. And this was the one, the METS to the liver, that some books really got into. Boy, you have to describe. You know, if you see a tumor that looks like this, then you know it comes from here. And if it looks just like a little bit different, then you know. And I think realistically, first of all, it's very hard to remember all that. But second, especially if you're not seeing Mets every single day. But more importantly is that there's so much overlap on what things do look like. But actually, there were a few that have some common characteristics. Let's start with those. Colon. Well, it's actually colon. Tends to be hypoechoic. The colon tends to be hypoechoic. The kidney. So any kind of like primary kidney cancer, that too tends to be hypoechoic. Cancers that come from the ovaries, so primary ovarian cancer tends to be cystic. And lung tends to be target or bullseye. And so this one is actually, and I realized it just as I was speaking, and like, oh, I'm about to say something slightly wrong here. This one is a colon cancer. Colon cancer, according to your book, was, you could depend on colon cancer to be hypoechoic when seen in the liver. But this one presents as a bullseye. And so you see, obviously, there's, I guess it would help if I have a different color here. You can see there's a inner layer, an outer layer, and then even beyond that, there's another layer here. This last layer, erase these. That last layer, that's seen right there, is known as a hypoechoic halo. That's a terminology that doctors like. They want to know if there's a hypoechoic halo. You can barely see it around here. You can't really see it up here, but it's definitely there. Doctors do like that terminology. They like it when you see that because it does kind of indicate that this tumor actually has a mass effect. It's pushing out against the liver against the liver parenchyma and causing some fluid buildup around there. So they do like that. The other metastasis we can often see are in the liver. So from other places, well, gallbladder, just through extension, direct extension from the gallbladder into the liver is certainly possible. Stomach, and of course, anything from the portal system, which actually includes the gallbladder. The gallbladder dumps the blood supply of the gallbladder goes into the portal system. The stomach, anywhere along the GI tract. In fact, I'm going to say stomach GI because definitely, well, we mentioned colon already, which is GI tract. The pancreas, that too, the blood supply of the pancreas, the venous blood supply, much of that goes into the splenic vein. And of course, the spleen is part of the splenic vein, is a part of the portal system. So it's all being brought back to the liver. Oh, pancreas. I think breast is the only one I didn't mention, and that's a bonus. Breast obviously is not part of the portal system, although most likely extension perhaps to the lymph node or lymph system, because the breast is very highly, um, there's a lot of lymph in the breast, and so it goes straight to the lymph nodes and perhaps back to the liver that way. But that's kind of a guess on my part.
Okay. What did all of those have in common? Just that all of them lead eventually to the liver?
So the liver is, it's the organ that is most likely to get mets, and because everything goes to the liver, all the blood in the body goes to the liver, and so much of the blood from the portal system goes directly to the liver. So any cancers of the GI tract, the spleen, the pancreas, gallbladder, even that all goes to the liver. The other ones, some of these obviously don't go directly: ovaries, lung, breast. They don't, kidney. They don't go directly to the liver, but the liver it's kind of a sponge for everything else.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Okay, so I put up a couple of videos, guys. I really encourage you to look at them, because I was reading through. It was like 3 pages in your book about contrast, and I mean, that's a hard read if you're not even familiar right now with a regular study, much less a contrast study. And so the video I put up is not exactly an easy video either for someone who's new into this, but I think it certainly gave you a much better idea of what they're doing these days with contrast. And so contrast has been allowed by the FDA for the use of liver and to look at liver tumors in the liver. And the thing about them are these tumors have very different filling characteristics. So if it's a hemangioma, for instance, you're going to have this circular tumor that, boy, well, that's a circular tumor over here, and perhaps it's a hemangioma, perhaps it's cancer, perhaps it's focal nodular hyperplasia. And what they can do now is really take a look at how, if the rim lights up, and then the tumor itself lights up from the outside in, kind of like to the point where, so in other words, the middle here is the last part to light up with the microbubble contrast. That could be an indication that it's just simply a hemangioma, something benign. Whereas in this case, I believe, let's see, nodular global enhancement of arterial phase. Oh, I didn't write that. I know both of these are both HCC. 2 different patients. Nodular global enhancement in the arterial phase. Ooh, what is the arterial phase? So, and all of all of the modalities have different phases. Most of them just talk about an arterial phase and a venous phase. In the liver, we talk about arterial, venous, and portal, which is a little bit different. Now, the way this happens, the blood so arterial phase. Why is the arterial phase first? Are we putting a needle in the artery? No. We're actually putting a needle in most likely the cubital vein of the arm. That's the big, right where your arm bends. That's where the cubital vein is. And those microbubbles, they have to be put in carefully so you don't blow them up as they're going in, because these bubbles are fragile. And well, they go straight to the heart because you put it into a vein. Where else is it going to go? The heart goes through, actually through the lungs and then back and then out the aorta. So then the aorta is the arterial phase. And so it goes, so about what, arterial phase, well, within 10 seconds, it goes from your arm to your heart, through your lungs, back to your heart, into the aorta, and then starts to fill. It starts to fill. In the case of HCC, it fills rather quickly. And let's see, 120 seconds after contrast injection in the late phase. Okay. What it does is fills, and then in the portal phase, I think what they said, they said this must be the very beginning of the portal phase. It quickly loses enhancement and then goes to, it actually hypo enhances. So at this point, and D 188, yeah, hypo. So when I say hypo enhancement, that means there's actually less bubbles inside after the initial arterial phase fills it up. Let's see what happens in E. Nodule displays heterogeneous enhancement in the arterial phase. What am I calling E? That's not the arterial phase. This would be the arterial phase. Heterogeneous enhancement, but in any case, it fills quickly, and then it hypo enhances after the arterial phase into the portal phase and the venous phase. And so the portal and the venous phase means, after, well, it goes through the arteries, and then, then it has to go through capillaries, and then it becomes veins. And so now you go into the venous phase. And for us, of course, we have the portal phase. So blood travels from the intestines up to the portal, carrying these microbubbles along as well. So, I mean, it's just in a quick nutshell. I know I'm going through this kind of quickly, but not too terribly much of a reason to spend a lot of time on this. Explaining it is a lot harder than seeing it. So like I said, I would definitely watch that video that I've put out there. The last thing I wanted to talk about, 144, good, elastography. So as you guys recall, elastography, I really spoke about it more in the case of, you have a tumor here and you hit it with an elastogram, and you have a region of interest. And we look at the different ways that this fills. And so this is kind of blue, and the rest outside, well, how pretty, is more of a pink. And you have a scale on the side. Oops. The scale on the side, I know that's pathetic, but was similar in style to a color scale of Doppler, where you say blue was more stiff, and is less stiff. And so that is one type of elastography where we're looking at a tumor or so, and something of interest, and of course that's our ROI, our region of interest. And we're trying to see, you know, is that tumor stiffer or not? And so in this case, it is stiffer. That supports the idea that this is more likely to be cancer, because cancer tends to be more stiff than the surrounding tissue. The other type of elastography that we could think of is you have a much smaller region of interest. And so here's my ROI. This is, on the screen, this is going to be a really small box. And everything around here is just liver. In fact, let's just draw in the liver. Now, when we do this, actually, this is technically too low. You don't want this too deep in just because of the attenuation. Just like any other ultrasound beam, this is going to attenuate. So you probably want the region of interest a little higher up, not all the way up here. Probably not that deep, but that's good. If there's a blood vessel running through your region of interest, well, obviously that's going to change the stiffness inside of there. So we avoid blood vessels. We avoid having a region of interest on a side beam, because as you know, imaging sideways, the machine is not as good at it. So in any case, we have this region of interest, and we have an elastogram going on. An ultrasound beam is put through, and of course beams, they travel in a straight line, a curved wavefront, but it's a straight line. And it's mechanical, longitudinal, mechanical type of sound beam, or all sound beams are longitudinal mechanical. But what this guy can do is create a force, like a strong pulse can go through and creates shear waves going off to the side. These shear waves, now remember, this is traveling at 1540, let's do 1.54 millimeters microsecond, 1.54 millimeters per microsecond, or 1540 meters per second. And these shear waves are more like, what was it? I think it's like 10 meters per second. Huge difference in speed. And they're not sound waves. They're like waves on the ocean. They still move energy, but they're not technically sound waves. Well, these shear waves are created from the beam of sound, and you have some shear waves going off in either direction inside of that region of interest. And the speed of the shear wave, just like the speed of sound, the speed of the shear wave changes depending on the density, or the, I shouldn't say the density, the stiffness of the liver. So a stiffer liver, faster shear wave. But the shear wave is so much slower than the actual sound beam that the sound beam is able to pulse, 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 and actually watch these shear waves go away. And by watching them go away, by watching the speckle patterns changing, they're able to we are able to determine the stiffness. And so all I'm really getting to right now is this is kind of the newest form of elastography. It's becoming common in this town because I've seen a number of doctors using it. It can give you the overall stiffness of the liver. So we can quantify how stiff this liver is. So we're not looking at any specific tumor. We're just we're going to put this, we're going to do it like 10 to 15 times on the same patient. And you put the box here, and put the box here, and put the box there. And you take an average of what all of these are. And you know, we have a way of staging liver disease from mild to all out cirrhosis. Okay. So I've never had a good way, guys, of talking about tumors. So I know this is probably a little bit, you know, your heads are spinning. But what I really just try to do is pull the main points from the chapter and kind of hand them back to you. But if you guys have questions, obviously, as always, you know, let me know. Write to me or call me or interrupt me. Anything you need. But it's 153. The second part is I wrote to you guys. It's actually going to be chapter 4. And at the end, the last part of chapter 4, the reason I am doing it is going to be portal hypertension. I know that's a little bit, seems like it's out of order. There's a reason for it. It's very hard to talk about the anatomy of the liver, cirrhosis, and not talk about portal hypertension at the same time. So that's why we're going to hit that today. And this will be fun. Portal hypertension is cool. So not cool for people who haven't, but it's cool for us to discuss. So look forward to a better second half. Let's see, I need a break. 2:15. We'll see you guys back at 2:15.